My opponent's claim is Joseph Kony needs to be caught before the U.S. military pulls out of Uganda, and my claim is that Joseph Kony does not need to be caught before the U.S. pulls out of Uganda. Because the U.S. is jumping into a complex problem Uganda has been dealing with for over a century. The U.S. budget cannot afford continued involvement in Uganda, and because catching Kony will not end the majority of Ugandan and neighboring countries' corruption and development problems. The LRA, which is Kony's army, has been causing problems, abusing and terrorizing the locals since it formed in 1987, and Kony has been on the run since 2005. And since then, he hasn't been caught, so nobody really knows where he is, how long it's going to take to find him, or when the manhunt will be over. And since the LRA has risen to power, there has been they have received on and off support from neighboring presidents and leaders, and have been given authority by certain governments surrounding Uganda. African governments have benefited from Kony's power in the past and may be currently receiving assistance from neighboring leaders, which I got that from the New York Times. So basically, Kony has been he's stayed in power for so long because these leaders and presidents are kind of like defending him sometimes, because they have a lot of issues between each other too. And the Ugandan military has been involved with corruption in the past. They've had corruption problems in the past, so maybe Kony's not the one that we should be focusing on catching. And the United States budget cannot afford continued involvement in Uganda, because the U.S. government has already spent over $40 million trying to counter the LRA's forces since 2008, and we're already in debt, and we can't afford to just keep donating money to a problem when we don't know it's going to be solved. And although Kony is a criminal, he poses no real threat to the United States. And catching Kony will not end the majority of Ugandan and neighboring countries' corruption and development problems. Like I said earlier, Ugandan government has been accused of being corrupt, and so is their military, and so Kony's not really the only problem there. And that's it. Are you taking notes?
Okay, well, you identify the claim pretty clearly. There's a reasonable counterclaim that you're introducing that talks about the complexity of the issue, the costs, and the idea that it's not really going to solve the problems if they get Coney anyway. The background on the LRA is okay. I think you need to be a little bit clearer about what their power consists of. Are they in control of the government, or are they just in control of sections of the country, or are they using the violence and terror that they have to exert power over particular areas? I don't really get a very clear picture, and so I'm not sure whether or not I can make the inference that you want us to make about how important they are in the power structure there. The notion that there are other forces out there that are contributing to this problem, I think that's a good argument. And the evidence from the New York Times that says that local surrounding governments have in fact supported Coney in some way, I think that adds to the complexity of the problem like you were talking about, and suggests that getting him is not automatically going to eliminate the problem. That's a pretty good counterclaim on those issues. The notion that it's a budget problem, I think, is a little underdeveloped. $40 million since 2008, that's about $10 million a year. And for you and me, that's a lot of money. But since we spent $1.7 trillion last year, I'm not exactly sure that that's what's breaking the bank. We got plenty of other things that are breaking the bank. I think that if you could point out, for instance, that it hasn't been effective, that Coney continues to escape any attempt to capture him, that spending additional money wouldn't produce that particular result, those would be stronger arguments. There's not really much analysis of the evidence or the reasoning that the advocate used on those particular points. And the notion, the counterclaim that it's not really going to end corruption in Uganda, I think that that's an important point. One thing that you might want to show is that the corruption in Uganda that would continue would certainly fall in the same level as what Coney is responsible for. I think most people are outraged about Coney, not because he's corrupt, because that wouldn't make him particularly different from lots of other rulers in the area there, like you just said, but the means by which he's obtained whatever power he has, especially the use of children and genocidal techniques. I think that there's some argument about those, and those largely seem to be ignored by your argument on this process, and they seem to be the primary motivation for U.S. involvement here, because let's face it, that it's a yit storm over there, as they say. It's just not a good scene. So I think that's the strongest part of your argument. All right, thank you.